Welcome back. You're listening to Make Planning Make Sense. My name is Aaron Zimmerman, and I'm a director at Centro Planning Consultancy.
And I'm Alex Roth, a planner at Centro Planning Consultancy.
Today, we're happy to reintroduce you to Laurie Handcock, the director of Built Heritage and Townscape at Iceni. In the previous episode, you heard part one of our conversation, and today we're picking up where we left off with part two. We really enjoyed talking with Laurie about how important clear communication and understanding the nuances can really shape a planning outcome. Another really interesting thing we talked about was the way that the discretionary system seems to be designed to create a wide safe landing zone for applications to be approved, but how that discretion can also actually create a degree of uncertainty and anxiety amongst applicants and decision makers, which might contribute to a default do-nothing scenario. And I think that it's something that was really, really helpful to chat through because it is something that speaks to our day-to-day work that helps to light the way to show how to get to yes in a discretionary system. Before we kick off, I just want to let you know that there is explicit language in this episode. It is brief, but if you are listening to this with kids in the room, I just wanted to give you fair warning that this might be one for the headphones on your morning commute.
As always, our email is podcast@centroplan.co.uk. Let's jump in. Here's part two of our conversation with Laurie Handcock.
There's a lot of that in the London plan as well, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Exemplary, has to be exemplary.
Yeah, well, and we've got a case in Watford actually at the moment where we've been told to be outstanding, and you look at what's been consented and you go, well, you don't know what outstanding looks like, which is fair enough because it's not a thing, you know.
Which is, it's not fair enough because it's a matter of personal taste. It's fair enough because it's just not a thing.
It's just not a thing. But there's so much context that goes behind any exemplary, outstanding, whatever, but it just becomes yet another stick to beat development with. I'll give you an example of a case we had not too far from here in Islington, where we had a day and a half of design evidence. There was the architect, there was me, there was the design and conservation officer from the local authority, and it was all picky, what about this, you know. What happened when the decision came through is that the inspector put an image from our evidence, what it looks like now, and basically said, if anybody wants to tell me that looks worse, then they're out of their tree, basically.
Yeah.
Everybody wants perfection. Everyone wants what happens on that site to be the best thing that it can possibly be. You know, to go back to that heritage thing, it's about, you know, clear and convincing justification and minimising conflict. Have you done enough? Have you done enough? Have you done enough? But the reality is, most sites that are up for development are not very good. That's why they're up for development. They either don't really work very well, they're underutilised, they look bad.
Yeah.
And the biggest issue, I think, that heritage and sort of townscape issues generate in the planning system is they just create this opportunity for months and months and years of design conversation without anybody being able to go, do you know what? We want things to be delivered rather than perfect. So we think you've done enough.
Yeah. To say that as an applicant makes us sound so blasé or lazy, right? And it's a little bit difficult to run as an argument, but the principle is irrefutable, right? Can I sort of ask about a phenomenon that we've come across based on what you were saying about heritage playing something of an outsized role in planning, in your view? Because heritage is so highly valued and the status quo sometimes is presumed to be better than any development, especially in a conservation area or to a listed building. We've been in situations where a proposal is in the setting of a heritage asset. And the position of the council very quickly is, well, of course, there's going to be some harm here. And I know everyone can have a different opinion, but I can't for the life of me understand what that harm would be if you really tried to articulate it.
Yeah.
But that's then just sort of used as a cudgel for a completely unrelated planning thing that they want, because officers know that design and heritage are things that you can put on any reason for refusal and say, well, that's just my professional view. So, and you end up playing monkey in the middle about something that's not even related to heritage at all.
Yeah, one of the things I say to people is that if I ever wanted to help someone object to something, one of the things that I would say is find a heritage reason for refusal. Because, you know, you're definitely going to be able to hold it up without costs because it's a matter of judgment.
Yeah.
The weight to be given to it is sufficient in a lot of cases to turn an entire planning application. And the range of judgments that's available to you on either side of the table.
The unreasonable test.
You in order to get to a point on heritage where you're Wednesbury unreasonable, you have got to be batty.
But I think to call somebody out on that is also counterproductive, because then it's the how dare you. Oh, no.
Yeah.
How dare you? That's, not going to work as a response. And so our work as planning agents is often to let them have that premise, not necessarily grant the premise by any means, but to understand that premise in its context.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I've thought about a lot over my career is whether or not heritage is a moral issue. Because the issue, in a way, with the planning system is that it's trying to deal with a whole range of issues which are the source of outrage, whether it be parking, whether it be light, whether it be biodiversity, heritage. They are all potential sources of outrage. And as a professional, you spend your whole time, particularly from the consultancy side of things, going, let's take the outrage out of this. This is a technical exercise. What's the sort of technical outcome? And I've been asked a few times whether or not I've had to argue something that makes me feel uncomfortable. There's two parts to that. One is, no, if I'm uncomfortable with it, you can be darn sure that the conservation officer is going to be uncomfortable with it. So there's no point even having the discussion. But two, I think that heritage is as moral an issue as whether or not people have a roof over their head. Heritage assets can be a blight. It is possible for them to be that.
Yeah.
If they are in a bad condition and it's not viable to return them to a good position without also creating a development adjacent to it, which is unacceptable. So it can be better to demolish and then create the better development than to keep it, because you've got to keep it, and that's what we're told, because the only moral issue in play is the heritage aspect.
Yeah. And in many cases, there would be a range of acceptable options that could balance those different competing priorities in different ways. But that range is actually something that should be a comfort to decision makers. It's not one of those ranges that creates yet more ambiguity. It's a range that should be sort of a safe landing zone for a variety of proposals.
Yeah. I think that it's become a bit of a trope in planning to look at examples of where things have gone wrong. And to go, oh yeah, we need to make sure that doesn't happen again. And, oh, look at that, look at this bad surface, look how that's been done. Of course it's got to be right. Of course we want it to be right. But like you say, it's a landing pad issue rather than a sole solutions issue. Yeah. And I think creating a system where you're forcing development teams to think about all of those things in extreme detail at all times also makes the risk of those errors greater. Because it is incredible how much stuff falls through the cracks, because the thing in principle is so complicated that the planning authority, under resourced as they are, doesn't actually have the capacity and the capability then to deal with all of those issues. Anxiety is it's one of the most prominent flavours in the fruit salad of planning, isn't it, really? It goes back to what we were saying earlier. There's an absence in the planning system generally of the opportunity to say this is a right solution. It's basically predicated on saying, I think in the minds of a lot of authorities, it's predicated on what is the right solution. Yeah. And I think that ability to let go a bit at the end and go, okay, you've dealt with this, you've done that, that's not perfect, that's not great, but this is all good stuff. You're delivering all this good stuff. Can we have a bit more of that? Yeah, have a bit more of that. Right, brilliant. Okay, bundle it all together. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Going back to that concept in the context of a discretionary system, I would look at all of these documents and say the intention is to give a safer landing zone to granting permission. And it's really difficult to communicate that to somebody who's already taken a different view of how that discretion is meant to be wielded.
Yeah, and I think it ends up expressing itself through fear, absolute fear of making the wrong decision, because there's so much discretion available. There's almost so many potential options available.
But doesn't that take the pressure off?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we've definitely seen cases where...
Shouldn't it take the pressure off, rather?
It should, it should. Yeah, a really great example is the extent to which case officers can just go, oh, conservation officers identified some harm, so more than my job's worth, really. Because that that is a removal of anxieties. So that's an easy decision at that stage. Well, that's the reason for refusal.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks for giving me my reason for refusal. I don't need to worry about all the rest of this planning balance stuff now.
So in the fruit salad recipe of planning, is anxiety a key ingredient, or is courage the missing ingredient?
I think definitely a bit more courage would be a very good thing. My overriding feeling on the industry as a whole is that for us, it works equally as badly if there's no conservation officer at all, to if there is, I don't really like the phrase bad conservation officer, but if there's an unhelpful or unconstructive conservation officer. What I really want to deal with is a professional who really understands the policy issues at play and wants to deliver, and can be very clear about how you need to get to where you need to get to. And there is a confidence in that. What I think is really interesting is the whole edifice requires confidence somewhere, and where it's absent in, a case officer, for example, or a head of planning, that is so much more destabilizing to the whole process.
Exercising discretion without courage is just basically not knowing exactly what to do and then just dropping the ball.
Yeah. So you basically need a head of planning, good relationship with their councillors, understands the political sensitivities, understands what they want to deliver overall, and is laser focused on delivering that. Once you've got that in place, even on a day-to-day basis of talking to a case officer, talking to a conservation officer, as long as there's enough of a connect between them and everyone else, you've got a reasonably confident case officer who's willing to listen to all of their stakeholders on a siloed basis. And
It's
bring
a very
it all
rosy
together into one
picture.
thing. I mean,
It's a very rosy picture.
when it happens,
Yeah.
I love my job.
When we have a good case officer, it is like the 1st of May. It is just absolutely fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose in addition to that, another ingredient in the fruit salad that I would like to discuss
Trademark.
is, in addition to courage in decision making and in planning teams, do we need to have more courage in policy making and setting clear objectives? You mentioned earlier, Laurie, the LDDC and the clarity of objectives that they had in developing the Docklands, for example, was likely one of the reasons how they were able to bring forward so much development. To what extent do we actually need to make certain, or perhaps be more courageous in our priority setting in policy making, in national policy, in the NPPF and in development plans, to actually maybe take more of a position on what we prioritize? Because I can see that for decision makers, for a planning officer, when there's no consequence of the no action decision, that you end up in a bit of decision paralysis when you have so many conflicting priorities.
Yeah, I think from my silo, the bit that needs to change is legislation, because right at its very base, there is a lot of disconnect between policy and statute. The statute is extremely old and doesn't really make sense anymore. But yeah, I think generally what you can see is a process, it seems to me, of every political entity that comes in sort of changing the emphasis of the wording in one way or another. And it can make a difference. I think in the strategic land work that we do, we've absolutely seen a change in the way that decision making is made at that governmental end. We know it affects inspectors. I mean, I think the inspector in the Ealing John Lewis decision was really straightforward in just saying, it's not for me to question the government. Government has said it's all about growth. So there's your decision making.
We'll be right back.
I kind of want to circle back to the NPPF, right? And the inspector's position that it's not their place to challenge the government, because we were very excited by the changes to the NPPF in December of 2024. And I'm just going to read a bit of NPPF paragraph 125C. Using suitable brownfield land within settlements for homes and other identified needs should be approved unless substantial harm would be caused. And then it goes on. But the idea is that if you're in a settlement and it's a brownfield site, if the council is not meeting its housing targets and does not have a plan to meet the housing targets, if you propose residential uses on that land, it should be approved unless there's substantial harm caused.
Yeah. It's the point at which barristers up and down the land are rubbing their hands with glee about the potential cases that might fall into their laps. And I think you end up in the situation where, because of this thing of trying to shift the dials using words, you end up in this situation where you've got great weight over here, substantial weight over here, substantial harm. Like, that paragraph should be brilliant, should be really helpful, should be really clear. And I have been quoting it left, right and centre to people, and they sort of go, yeah, get it.
Samesies, yeah.
But I've got some question marks about how it actually plays out. The other thing, we were looking at this Dominus appeal decision earlier from Stratford. The question I have about the Dominus appeal decision, thinking about it, is would the inspector in that case have found substantial harm to the townscape in a world prior to the introduction of that paragraph? Because he's suddenly got a new test in his mind. So no criticism of the inspector, but the new test that's been put into his mind is, have you got a situation where substantial harm arises? So he's been asked the question of whether or not substantial harm arises. So once again, you've created a situation where you've got someone hunting around potentially for substantial harm. Or maybe he thought the whole thing was really harmful, but he didn't think it was substantially harmful, but he doesn't think it's acceptable. So in order for it not to be acceptable, it's got to go there. Yeah, I think you change the wording of the appeal decisions and the policy decisions, but I've yet to see something that really...
We were the planning agents for an appeal where this was raised to an inspector early in 2025. And of course, we're waving the papers like, breaking news, this is great. The LPA shrugged, I don't think this changes anything. And the inspector gave regard to 125C. They did misquote it, to be fair, and approached it in summary with the general positive weight that needs to be afforded to brownfield development for homes, and did not find substantial harm. And the appeal was dismissed on these heritage grounds, all less than substantial. And I guess my concern is that at the governmental level, somebody's put this in, and they've set off these parameters, right? So it's brownfield land, it's within a settlement, it's for an identified need, including housing. But then when you put that into the MPPF with all of its other priorities, and the priorities are not clearly prioritized, then you end up in a situation that you've just described, Laurie, where somebody is able to say, well, now that I understand that these are the pathways available to me as a decision maker, I want to get to a decision that seems contrary to what 125C says. Is the problem that we're still leaving those pathways open?
There must be enormous frustration from government in terms of pulling the levers on the planning system. Because, to me, that is a strongly worded... It's almost like...
Stop fucking around is what it says.
Yeah, it's like, make it happen.
Yeah.
Just make it happen. Unless you've got something, unless you're really worried about it, make it happen.
Get to yes.
But the overwhelming process in people's minds is still, in the planning system's mind, is still, am I on board with this? Do I buy it? And in a way, it doesn't matter what words you put in the MPPF. That judgment, that decision still comes out in the end of it. And I think it's a thing that we see at appeal as well, that you're dealing with some extremely experienced, really smart, really thoughtful people who are looking at an enormous amount of data and information over, maybe, in some cases, months and months. How inspectors deal with these 3-month inquiries and stuff, I just do not know. How are you meant to synthesize that? Do they?
We're on development teams for 3 to 5 years sometimes, so I think that we can understand.
Yeah,
it's a lot to brush up on quickly. That's what I can absolutely sympathize with.
To play it out into a balance, is so hard, and yet I suspect that a lot of decision making is being made, or the core of a lot of decision making appeal stage is being made on the broad principles. I would be very surprised if many inspectors are writing out an appeal decision, getting to the end and getting to one harm that they'd forgotten about or whatever, and going, that changes everything.
Can I try to rephrase that? Because I wanted to follow up on the term broad principles. If they like the scheme, if they like the development, is that a way to put it?
Yeah.
And then like water through a house, they find their way.
I still really get the sense from the work that we do locally at appeal that if there's someone in the room who's with you, or if the inspector's with you, if the head of planning's with you or whatever, then you're going to get there. And it's an exercise in how you're going to get there.
What surprises me, what disappoints me maybe, is that I think we should all be aligned that whatever the journey is for each individual person, the destination has to be adequately supplying the needs of the society as it relates to built environment.
Yeah, I think development has been seen for a very long time as the bad guy.
Yeah.
I think it still creates a sort of a negativity. It feels, working in the development sector, like it remains one of the bad guy sectors in society.
Yeah.
And so there is this assumption from the public, which filters into members and then filters into the system, that there is some piss taking that's going to take place somewhere on the line. And in some ways then it's a brinksmanship exercise in working out how far the applicant is then taking the piss.
Yes.
Rather than going, oh, you want to deliver something on a site which is clearly under delivering. Great, that's great. Thanks for coming in. Glad you're here. That sort of discussion, that thanks for coming conversation, is one that we've had in Norwich, for example.
Yeah.
It's one we've had in Stevenage. It's one we've had in Cardiff.
There's a huge difference between the reception by a London authority and by, say, a non-London medium-sized city kind of authority. Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks for supporting small businesses.
Oh, I see what you've... This is actually quite interesting. I think that would be really nice for the town centre.
And like, without being, we took a model on a scheme to Norwich, and it was like they had never seen anything like it.
Oh, I love that.
It was so good.
Christmas morning.
But like
I love a model too. I'm not knocking Norwich for their reaction to that. That sounds fantastic.
The thing that I thought about that was Norwich is a fantastic city, and it is a city that shouldn't be thrashing around hoping that someone's going to spend a bit of money there.
Yeah.
It should be somewhere where people go, brilliant, this is a nice place and we're going to bring great new stuff here. And actually, I think once you start talking to people and once you start explaining that is an authority that's open for business, that's of interest to people. It's of interest to the development world. But yeah, as it goes, most of the time we end up spending our time in London where the barriers are much more up because, we know that you want to make money out of us.
Yeah.
That's what everyone else is here for. How much do you want?
Or you want to develop to provide for the needs of the community and society at large.
Yeah.
And that should not carry an original sin. Yeah. So for heritage, I'm just sharing my thoughts. On heritage though, what would your policy recommendations be? And it does sound like, if I could lead you a little bit, it does sound like changing one paragraph of the MPPF or changing a section of the MPPF doesn't seem to be getting us there when the iterative changes don't seem to be producing substantively different outcomes nationwide.
I mean, I think as a starting point, the first thing that I would do is sort out this non-designated heritage asset stuff, which is
niche. Oh, okay. Tell me that.
Comfortably the biggest issue. They're a total grey area. Anything can be a non-designated heritage asset, and they can be basically identified through any process.
Oh yeah, no, it's massively YOLO.
Yeah. In a way, listed buildings are more straightforward because, again, it's this put up and shut up point. Is the building listed? Yes. All right, fine. We'll deal with it as a listed building. We know what the policy is. We've got the legislation. We know what we've got to work with. Non-designated heritage assets. I've seen schemes try to get refused on the basis of a setting effect on a non-designated heritage asset where they've been of quite significant scale. We're awaiting an appeal decision at the moment on a non-designated heritage asset where one of the reasons for refusal is the loss of a single non-designated heritage asset, and the scheme is delivering 500 plus homes. To me,
you shouldn't have to wait to see what that appeal decision says.
To me, that all just feels completely totally disproportionate. It's created yet another weaponized bit of the planning system. So I think for me, what I would probably like to do is to get to a point where you say, right, we're going to have a grade 3 situation, or we're going to have a nationally led criteria for non-designated heritage assets. The thing is, this is where the problem lies, because the answer has to be that there's clarity around it. It's got to be yes or no.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to show that you've met the criteria. The number of times I've someone said to me, oh, someone's trying to put this building on the local list. Can you write a letter saying why it shouldn't be? And I go to them, we can, but it is a waste of your time. And so we do it, and they just put it on the thing anyway. Doesn't meet the criteria, but there's it's the complete Wild West. There's nothing holding local authorities to account.
Yeah.
That is a problem. That is a big problem. And Marks and Spencer's is a good example. I mean, that's a non-designated heritage asset issue fundamentally.
Yeah. There is no threshold. But can I end on a high note?
Yeah, go on.
Thank you so much and congratulations for the appeal success for the screens at Piccadilly Circus.
Well, and here we are, right in the heart of and here we are, right in the heart of the wide range of decision making that's possible. Because that is a case where we were told repeatedly. I overheard someone in the corridor outside the inquiry room saying, "I don't understand why we're here. This is a total waste of time," which gives you some sort of essence. It was very, very clear to everyone on the other side of the table that decision was going down.
Oh, no. I received the letter that we received in lieu of the pre-app meeting we paid for, which could be summarised. It was about 1 page long, but it could be summarised as "don't you dare."
Yeah, it's why we even here.
Yeah.
And yet, there we are with a consent. And some of the sort of outrage, again, the idea of it that we heard in the hearing is absolutely archetypal of what you see in the industry. And I'm sure when it happens, there'll be a lot of outrage again. Actually, interestingly, when it's been in the press, hasn't been in the press very much, but when it has been in the press, the public response, the non-professional public response, is actually like,
"Oh, isn't that
great.
cool?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Great, love it."
Yeah.
But yeah, there'll be a lot of heritage outrage, which I'm looking forward to. But, you know, it's a great decision, basically.
It's a great decision. I was complimented on my statement of common ground, so very pleased about that.
It was the longest heritage statement of common ground I've ever done in my entire life.
Oh my God, that table at the end. So going back to the very start of this conversation, you said normally the parties can agree on which designated assets are relevant.
Yeah, sometimes people can't even agree their own names.
And what their significances are. Absolutely fantastic scheme. Laurie Handcock, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to get in touch, then we'd love to hear from you. Please write to us at podcast@centroplan.co.uk. Make Planning Make Sense is presented by Centro Planning Consultancy and recorded in beautiful London, England. Its executive producer is me, Aaron Zimmerman. Additional production by my colleague and co-host Alex Roth. Marketing and promotion by our colleague Reese Raymond. Graphic design by our colleague Mariam Malaxi. Music by Joseph McDade. From all of us here at Centro, thank you so much for listening.